Now, today we've been talking about Iran's new regulations on crypto, and joining us now to get some more information on this is Jason Fernandes. Hi, how are you doing?
Hi, excellent. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. Now, thank you so much for joining us today. Now, this is quite an interesting topic, actually, because you've actually been in Iran discussing blockchain. So let's talk quickly about the developing crypto events in Iran, about the gold-backed crypto for use within the country and a central bank digital asset to do business with other nations, which will ignore the US sanctions. So this is big news. Can we have your opinion on it?
Okay. Well, I've been invited to Iran. I haven't been there yet, but I plan to soon. I think it's inevitable that most countries will eventually move to promoting some sort of state-backed cryptocurrency, like payment, petro, etc. A gold-backed crypto will certainly help with stability in Iran. In April, Iran's currency hit an all-time low, and it's recovered somewhat today, but there's certainly a need for like a more stable way of doing this. So I think in this situation, the token can function like a wallet and channel excess assets into the economic cycle. And I think Iran's plan is to extend the technology for accelerating the pace of bank transactions between countries. And I think initially they're going to launch like a billion units, but I think in the near future it should be available in other places. And I think like this is sort of like in the same area as like other reports that the crypto real is being launched. So I think Iran is doing a lot of really good, interesting things in this space.
Now, you mentioned that this has been done to help with the economy and issues that Iran are currently facing. So Iran is one good example of how an economic crisis can make cryptocurrency the apparently logical next step. So do you agree?
Yes, I mean, there's certainly a link between economic crises and the rise of crypto in these countries. The Iran central bank recently released draft rules where they rescinded their ban on cryptos and ICOs. Although they continue to prohibit crypto's use within the country as payment. But I mean, the problem is, like in the case of Venezuela and the petro, what happens to these cryptos in times of political instability? So in Venezuela, Maduro's embattled government are able to use funds raised through petro to finance their regime. And that really goes to the heart of the issue of a central bank issued cryptocurrency, because it's not true cryptocurrency in the sense that ultimately, out of necessity, it is centralized by the state. So that's an issue.
So you have actually touched on my next question regarding Venezuela. So Russia and Venezuela are doing the same thing with crypto, or are planning to circumvent US sanctions. So is this the way to go and be successful at avoiding the effects of economic measures? What do you think?
So, I mean, in the short term, sure, this could have the effect of evading sanctions problems. But I think it remains to be seen how the global community can continue to keep up pressure on countries like Russia and Venezuela. They could, for example, make it really difficult for people to trade in those cryptocurrencies. So if, for example, they consider they begin to consider investing in these cryptocurrencies as breaking the law, that would severely reduce the appetite for these cryptocurrencies on the global market. So there is ways for certain, other countries to essentially continue to inhibit the ability of these countries to do business. So we don't really know how it's going to pan out, but that would be one of the areas I'll be looking at, whether they would sort of ban trading of these cryptocurrencies on certain exchanges. That could be a problem.
Exactly. Like you mentioned, there are other countries sort of doing similar things. For example, the Emirates and Saudi Arabia are also experimenting a cryptocurrency they will use likely instead of the dollar. So experts have been on Blocks Live TV saying this is the next step in the global currency as the US dollar is being looked at a money nobody wants to continue using, apparently. So do you agree with this?
Yeah, I mean, the dollar does have its problems, but in comparison to other fiat currencies, it's remained mostly stable. I don't mean it's been stable overnight, but it has been stable when compared to other fiat currencies. But I think overall, this is a progression of crypto. I mean, for currency in general, for it to move towards crypto. And I sort of think this is a natural evolution.
Sure. And so just continuing with the idea of natural evolution, what we're going to see in this space, other experts, for example, Christine Lagarde, the IMF head, suggest that the next step for cryptocurrency is to be issued by central banks. So others say that this will destroy digital assets. What is your perspective on this issue?
So I agree with Christine are that this is the natural next step for currency in general, and that is for it to be issued by the central bank. But it could lead to instability. So, for example, the Bank of International Settlements has warned that a central bank-based digital currency could allow for digital runs toward the central bank with massive speed and scale. So they said essentially that it could massively compound problems if there's any sort of instability. So if the concern is if the public had direct access to currency, they could flock to the central bank in times of panic and creating like a digital run, right? And if digital money was issued from one of the major central banks, this could actually lead to cross-border panic and contagion, because capital would fly. Basically, you would have capital fly from riskier assets and financial institutions in countries that are experiencing turmoil to other state-backed cryptocurrencies elsewhere. But I mean, that does have to be taken with a pinch of salt, because the BIS has always been skeptical of cryptocurrencies. But it is a possible problem.
Now, the market is bearish and the bull is shy, but there is talk about crypto around the world. So are we seeing mass adoption taking place?
Yeah, I think we are seeing mass adoption, but not quite in the way we hoped. If you consider like the promise of crypto is to democratize money and the financial system. And it's essentially a means for people to wrest power away from power structures. And right now what we're seeing is more of a top-down implementation of crypto by central banks. And at the same time, these central banks, for the most part, remain hostile to crypto. So India, for example, has openly mused about the possibility of creating a centralized crypto. They call it the Lakshmi. But their internal attitude towards crypto remains highly skeptical. Now, if you contrast this with Iran, essentially Iran recently issued draft rules, largely reversing their ban on crypto. And so essentially, at least Iran is being consistent in how they approach crypto. But we're seeing a lot of inconsistency with central banks and countries and how they approach crypto.
Sure, and we have actually touched on my next question earlier, but I think it would be really lovely and is quite important just to get some more information on this. It just seems that at this point, it is undoubtedly the next step in the evolution of money. So would you agree with this?
Yeah, I think so. But again, like I mentioned, there are dangers in terms of it could really compound financial instability in some countries and lead to contagion. So that is a major danger that hasn't quite been addressed, and we're really not sure. The increased efficiency could lead to economic instability and contagion.
Sure, and just finally for you, Jason, regulation is a big word in crypto. So how do you feel about it? Is it even necessary? And will the market be unstable? And will it adopt? Will it be quiet until the strict controls are in place, making cryptocurrency a reliable and trusted alternative to fiat? Or will the two eventually coexist?
So I'm in favor of regulations that for investor protection to those that invest in ICOs. But I'm suspicious of a lot of the other regulations around crypto trading, and basically other regulations that governments have tried to bring in with crypto. So, I mean, the promise of crypto is to democratize money and the financial system. And so to go through all the trouble of building a distributed, decentralized, permissionless, ledgerless system, and then voluntarily hand power right back to the government seems like a bad idea. But on the other hand, some degree of regulation may be necessary in order to get governments to leave crypto alone, but also for a lot of the ICOs to behave a little bit more ethically with how they handle money and how they distribute those funds.
Absolutely. Jason Fernandes, thank you very much indeed. It's been a pleasure having you with us today, as always.
Likewise. Thank you.
Now, that is all from this segment today. You can get in touch with us at BlockSlive TV on social media to give us your thoughts on this, where you can also see the latest cryptocurrency and blockchain updates. We'll see you after the break.
This is BlockSlive TV.